Hi, Kesha.
Hi.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm really excited to speak to you. And what's really interesting, by the time this comes out, I would have released about 11 episodes that I recorded in Mauritius. And you and I met before I left from Mauritius. And we were meant to record, and I was not feeling great. And I said, we'll do this when we come back, but we'll have it as part of the Mauritian series, except that you're here in London.
Yeah.
So welcome in person.
Thank you.
Really excited to speak to you, more so because your journey is somewhat different and it's quite specific to motherhood.
Yeah.
But it's different in the sense that you have a different perspective. You also have a different experience of motherhood.
That's right.
And I think it's high time that we bring the other side of society's expectations being seen somewhat differently by aspiring mothers, women who may want children, may not want children, and you happen to be one of those.
Yeah.
So maybe to start with, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm Kesha, soon to be 30 years old. I've got a little girl, Luna. She's 3.5. And I've been her mother for such a long time, and it's amazing. And that's me at the moment. And I used to do social media, but at the moment I've kind of like taken a little step back, focusing on motherhood and myself. So yeah.
And your last post, I think, goes back to quite some time.
Yes.
But that was the one that somehow struck a chord with me because you were very honest about your expectations before becoming a mother, or even at the time when you didn't want to become a mother.
Yeah.
And then the reality post having a baby.
Yeah.
Can we go back maybe to the start?
Yeah. So
what have been your expectations, your aspirations, maybe as a woman growing up?
So for me, I never it's quite interesting actually. I always dreamt about, like, I'm just saying, as like every little girl has like this dream of like one day I'll have a dream wedding, get married, have kids and stuff. But I kind of knew what I wanted my wedding to look like, but I never thought about kids. And kids, I had been with my partner for, we're going to touch on 10 years now, so a decade, and we had never spoken about kids. I was not very maternal, and he wasn't very paternal. I've not seen that side of him. And so the pregnancy was a major surprise, which I found out, I think it was 4 or 5 months in, and it was too late to do anything about it. And it was quite a shock to the system, to be honest. It kind of turned my whole world upside down. It might sound harsh. I love my little girl more than anything else in the world. Like, she's my everything. But at that time, you're not expecting, and you didn't want to become a mum. You never thought about having kids or spoken about having kids and whether or not that is the right choice. And now you're kind of like stuck in this. So, and I guess the mental aspect of it was what I think I was talking. It was a little bit after I had given birth to Luna. I think it was, if I'm not wrong, it was during the first year where I kind of spoke about how pregnancy was extremely hard, mentally, emotionally, physically. And also with that came the burden and the weight of like, you've got to be a good person to be able to bring up this new human, to shape her in the best way possible, that maybe you're not there yet. You, like, you know, we're never perfect, but you want to make sure, like, you want to bring her up to be amazing. So yeah, but yeah.
You only found out 4 or 5 months being in pregnancy that you were actually expecting a baby.
Yeah.
Something quite honest there. And if I may revisit what you just said, it was too late to do anything about it.
Yeah.
I know this is very personal, what we're here to talk about, and you gave me the permission to ask you whatever.
Yeah.
Would you have attempted an abortion maybe?
I think so. I think for me at that time, it sounds really bad, but you know, I love her and everything. But at that time I was in between careers. I was switching careers and I was studying. So for me, it was a little bit of, I kind of have to put all of this on pause and deal with this. So if I found out earlier, I think for me, I would have wanted to terminate, just because I feel like this is going to be quite, like, I don't know, people can agree or disagree, but I think you should have kids when you feel like you're ready to have kids, not when you think you need to have kids or when society tells you to have kids. It's having kids is something that's always going to stay with you for your whole life, right? It's not like, I don't know, you're going to buy a house, you can always sell it, right? Having a child is something that's permanent in your life from the day that it starts. So I think sometimes people do rush into it just because, and I feel like I was kind of stuck. I was one of those people, but I am still trying to kind of make it work in a way, like shape it in some way to make it into a good thing.
It's interesting that you said, obviously, a baby is for life. I literally had this conversation with an old colleague of mine, still a good friend, and I met him last year, went to his engagement party, and then I saw him this week, and he had a wedding band, and I was like, "Did you get married over the summer?" He was like, "Jemma, you came to my engagement party," and I said, "I came to your engagement party, but you have a wedding band now." He was like, "Oh yeah, I got married over the summer. It was a really small thing." Blah blah blah. And then we chatted for 10 minutes, and then he goes, "Oh yeah, and also I had a baby boy." I'm like, "Excuse me?" Like, he was a friend. And I'm like, "Well, how old is your baby?" He goes, "Well, he's like a month old." And I say, "You mentioned the wedding, you didn't mention the baby." And he goes, "Well, the wedding is more fun." And I said, "The baby's forever." Like, that's like the most crucial information I expect you to give me. So yes, a baby is life-changing. You talked about the need to be ready to have a child.
Yeah.
And sometimes the counter argument, or at least the statement I've had from people who have had a baby, is that you are never ready to have a baby.
Yeah.
And there is a certain transformation that you go through. The moment you happen to find out that you're pregnant, you just deal with it, you learn, you adapt.
Yeah.
At the time when you felt pregnant, and if you're comfortable talking about this, something that we talked offline, you were not married, which per South Asian standards and society norms would be something that could be frowned upon. Things are changing. Can we revisit that whole situation?
Sure.
What did that change for you?
So for me, I think initially I wasn't thinking about anything, because really having a baby with being married or out of wedlock, what does it really change, right? Except your maybe name on paper and stuff. But I didn't receive the pressure from my side of the family, but we did have a lot of pressure from his side of the family. And we did actually get, which I think no one knows, religiously married, just to appease some people. And this is another whole can of worms, but for me, I still say I'm not married to this day, because I kind of don't see, and even he says the same, because it didn't happen when we wanted, how we wanted it to happen. And we are both kind of on the same page where, there was, I feel like I didn't receive the pressure from my family. There was no one in my side of the family that was like, "Oh, you're pregnant, you need to get married." But I did have comments from the other side where they were like, "Oh, you need to hide them from people and get them married," and stuff like that.
Why?
Like,
Not surprised.
Yeah. And I was like, not a great thing to say. But so that pressure didn't stay. And I guess the only thing that mattered, it did kind of, because we were engaged at that point. So but yeah, it did. That as well was quite another mental thing for me to deal with, because it kind of like, was a thing that I wasn't ready, and I didn't want it at that time. Yeah.
So it was the pregnancy and the marriage.
Yeah. And then also building a house at the same time. So we were building a house. Our fell pregnant without knowing, and then your body changing, getting married, your dynamics changing, and all that kind of pressure of like, you know, just, you know, I've never known anything about being a mum. I don't have any friends around me except one very, very close friend, and she's the first person I said that I was pregnant to, who had been a mum at a very young age. And I remember calling her and being like, I don't know how to do this. And how did you do it? And she was like, you know what? It was amazing. It's the best thing you'll ever do. And she's actually expecting her second child now, so, which is amazing. But yeah, I also wanted to touch on what you said about, you know, some people say like, you're never ready to be parents. But what I meant by what I said, you need to be ready to be parents, is, so one thing about parenthood that I will agree is you never know what to expect, and you don't know what it's going to be like. So that's why I always say you don't need to have a child until you've had a child. Then we will miss being a parent, right? So you don't know what you don't know.
True.
Right? So, but what I mean by being ready is, you know, mentally ready, mentally strong, and maybe also physically in a good health, where you're able to be like, okay, I can run around after my child. I can take care of myself. I can take care of my daughter. Like, I wasn't in a great physical health myself.
Financially ready.
The financial... I think people don't realize how expensive kids are. Right. I said this to a friend. She said to me, oh, once I've saved 10K, I'm going to start trying for a child. And I said to her, before that baby's coming, that 10K is just going to go. And she looked at me and she was like, no way. And I was like, yeah, easy. Before the baby comes, you're going to use at least 10 to 15K just on the baby before it's come. That's not counting formulas and nappies. And she was like, okay, I need to save more. So it's all of that, you know, you need to be those aspects of parenthood that we don't talk about. And that's all. It's kind of like, yeah, it's all great, but it's, yeah.
What is the one thing, do you think so many women these days are very open about not wanting a child?
Yeah.
And I've noticed it even more so after the pandemic.
Yeah.
Because women and men alike have seen what the world has gone through at the time when the pandemic struck the whole world. And people are very open about it. To put that into perspective, I don't talk about my family's experience very much on here, but because it's not my life it's not my life story to tell. But my brother and my sister-in-law just had a baby girl.
Congratulations.
So, thank you. I'm officially auntie and I'm over the world. I keep calling that baby my baby. They're okay with that. I keep saying, I'm coming to see my baby. I mean, this baby is the first on both sides of the family. So that baby is going to be like
spoiled rotten.
Spoiled rotten, I can't tell you. But my brother and my sister-in-law did take time figuring out like parenthood, and they obviously had like life projects that they needed to sort, and they waited for the right time, and then without getting into the details about their personal lives, obviously it's taken them some time. And we respected that. But I remember at some point, like, people kept asking questions. And I even said to my mom, like, who knows, they might not want to become parents one day. Yeah. Maybe they don't want a child. And my mom was like, yeah, fine. And at some point, I think we even asked them the question, and we said, because people kept asking questions. And we even asked them the question, like, but do you want a child at some point? Because if you don't want a child, then ignore the rest of the world, like, ignore what society is saying. Yeah. You might not want a child, and that's it, full stop. Yeah. And they were like, no, we do want to become parents. We're just taking our time and we're figuring out life. And then they had their baby girl. Yeah. And by the way, it's my brother's baby, not my sister's. For some reason, when I posted this, people thought my sister who just got married.
I think it's the way she was holding.
Yeah, it was all of us. Like, my sister just got married. I mean, obviously, to each family their own, but like, my parents would ideally like it to be in a certain sequence and order. But no, it's my brother's baby. Also, more so because being twins, like, we hardly... my brother's 7 years older, so we obviously had a different circle of friends. So maybe that's why people don't see him as much on my social
Stories,
media, but that's my brother's baby. But then when they had the baby, me and my mom, we were like, you know what? Maybe they wouldn't want a second child after this, and that's fine. I think it was interesting to see how if I were to have the same conversation years back with my grandma, for instance, it would have been a different thing. Like, no, they need to have a child. They need to have 2 to 3 children.
Yeah.
Like society's changing and adapting. And my mom, for instance, my dad's perception, everyone's perception is
all changing,
adapting.
Yeah.
So to bring it back to what you were saying, yes, many women are talking about not wanting to have kids. And there's obviously a question of aging population, and there's declining number of children per parent, or like there's obviously single parent households as well. But do you think society is able to cope with the fact that women are increasingly saying we don't want children? Do you think society is able to absorb that new perception or stance on motherhood? For instance, when you were saying to people, I don't want to have children.
You know what? I don't think I ever, because remember I say very young, but I was
still are.
I was how old when I think I felt pregnant with Luna? I think around 26, 27. And pre that, I feel like because in my circle of friends, no one was really getting married, no one was engaged, or we're all kind of chilling, living life and, doing all that. But when we did speak about kids, I still remember having this conversation with my friend saying, I think I would rather adopt if I ever wanted kids than have my own. I think, like you said, because we've seen what's happening in this world and like all these kids that are being left around, and like there's so many kids nowadays that don't have a family. Rather than bringing another one in the world, you can just take them in. That was my stance on it. But I think also society per se, I had the pressure, even after having one, immediately it was like, oh, you need to start preparing for the second one. You need to start getting on it. And I was like, excuse me. But I had a C-section. So at the doctors, they tell you should not be getting pregnant for the first year at all. Don't even try to get pregnant and stuff. It can be really dangerous. And I think it takes your body up to 2 years to heal. But I think the pressure of society is also because it was so different back in their time. And I kind of had to have a chat with my mum actually about it, and I think also my mum is very close to me. She lives down the road, not far. So she was seeing my everyday life, and it was a bit where she could see how demanding it is to raise a child, but also the way that we were raising her. It wasn't just like have a baby, let her, like, don't take her out, don't do anything with her, don't spend that much time with her, which is kind of what my dad wasn't really like, didn't spend that much time with us. He was always working. The way we spoke with her, and how expensive nursery and everything is. And she then, I think it took some months, and I was like, I'm not interested in having a second child because, one, I don't have the mental capacity to deal with another baby. I don't think it would be fair on Luna for me to have a second child, because the amount of time that I want to give her 100% of myself, and I wouldn't be able to give either kids 100% of myself if I have a second one. And also number two, I have to move houses, it's not cheap. Like it cost us 3 days a week nursery for a month, for 4 weeks, is like nearly £900. And we don't live in that much of an expensive area. So, it's all these things about that. But I think more and more people are a bit more open. I have friends now that are like, we don't want kids, we just want to live how we are. Some friends are like, yeah, I definitely want kids. And some people that I know who never wanted kids now have 2 kids. So I think with communication, maybe some people might understand, some people might not. My partner's side of the family, we all still get asked, even though we have said so many times, you need to stop asking us. We don't want a second child. Still get asked to have a second one, and I'm just like, well, why don't you have one for us?
I think society's expectation of motherhood, or that someone should become a mother, I think the expectation is that it's almost a default setting.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's a choice.
It's not, yeah.
And you have the right to say no if you don't want to have a kid at some point. And if you don't want to experience motherhood.
Yeah. And I think what's changed with our generation is, one, I've seen more of people, I think, like in now getting married later. And I remember having this conversation with my mum, because we were talking about, I think it was about women not wanting to have kids anymore. And I said, but that's also because women now are so focused. Like back in the day, we weren't like, I'm talking about like my mom's time, where they weren't like career focused at all. They weren't thinking, I need to have a career, I need to invest in myself, I need to be financially stable. Whereas like women nowadays and men alike are more like, I need to be stable financially, I need to have a house, I need to have, if you want to, I need to have a stable job, a job where I feel happy. I need to I think mental health as well is so important in our generation, where we need to achieve all these things. And then by the time we've achieved all these things, obviously a lot of time have passed. Until, like, I mean, imagine getting married at 20 versus like, when you're a bit more. Exactly. 40s. And I think that's why women, and once we've kind of, I kind of think once we've kind of realized what having kids comes with. It's whether, I know people would disagree with this, they can say it's 50-50 parenting, but it's not. It's always going to be on the mum that's going to have to take the maternity leave. That's going to be mainly with the kids. After having the kids, you lose at least, if you have 2 kids, 5 to 6 years of your career. And maybe with 1 child, I would say 3 years of your career. So do you really want to work that hard and then restart again?
I always say this to my friends. The biological clock and the corporate ladder is not well aligned at all.
No. Yeah. I completely agree. It's harder for women to achieve success and go higher than it is for men.
It goes against the myth of you can have the best of both worlds, because by the time, say it's taken you like your 20s to figure out what you want to do and to keep climbing the ladder, by the time you've reached the peak of your career, like you've reached the peak of your professional journey, this is perhaps the time when you feel ready to have a family. And then you suddenly need to opt out of the industry, and then you come back.
And you start again. Yeah. And you have to start again. And that's kind of like saying, similar to what I was saying, is like, we don't want to do that. And sometimes maybe women, by the time, like, I also think like everyone has, like, I know all these things about the biological clock, but one of my partner's really good best friend, his partner actually had a baby when she was 40, and that was the first child on the first try. So I was like, I think we just need to prioritize ourselves before thinking like, like I said, having a child is something that we need to do, rather than like, we need to be like, I do want to be a mum. I want to have like someone to call me a mum. It's not just, I need to have a baby to be ticking the boxes and what have I achieved, right? Marriage, engagement, career, okay, house and everything. It's all, we're always chasing something better. Yeah.
It's great that we're having this chat, because like I told you, I recorded with a few people, like with a few guests back in Mauritius, where they had the other side of the story, that motherhood has been great for them. They always knew they wanted kids. And you're certainly speaking to someone, which we've talked about offline. You're talking to someone who's always had somewhat of a maternal instinct. I know I've always wanted kids. And even with my nephews and nieces, right? I mean, I've seen them when they were like my cousin's kids. There's one of my nephew, he's back in Paris, like half French, half Mauritian. And I remember him when he was a baby. I held him. He's now 10 years old. And somehow, I don't know how kids get it. Either they sense it from their parents that we are really close as cousins. Mm-hmm. They do have a connection to us, even if I don't see them very often. I see them perhaps like once a year, but that bond has stayed so strong. And I was always nervous that when he will grow up, he won't be.
He won't remember.
Yeah, no. But now when no one is around, he'll come and hold my hand very like quietly.
Oh,
and I mean, there's always been a joke around the family that when he was little, he used to say, I think he was like 3 years old. He said, "Un jour quand j'ai grand, je me marie à Jemma à Leclerc," which is like the Tesco in Paris. So like we joke about this.
Yeah.
I think the motherly instinct, I've always had it.
Yeah.
Now even more so with my niece, like I feel a different bond. Like the moment that baby was born, I was like, no one can touch that baby. If anyone does anything to that baby, you're done. But us having this chat, it's interesting perspective because there's always going to be two sides to the story.
Yeah.
There's always going to be two sides to the idea of women want to have kids or women should be having kids.
Yeah.
Women are born. You may have heard this. Women are born born
to be mothers.
Yeah, like the moment a girl is born, like she's born to be a mother one day.
I think it's a bit more crude than being a mother one day. It's more born to like have kids.
Birth?
Yeah.
Born to reproduce?
Yeah. Something like that. I've come across this and I'm just like, this is just not okay. Yeah, we have a reproductive system, but
yeah, right.
Our body, our choice. Yeah.
Our body, our choice, 100%. But do you think there's something similar to a redemption arc whereby you, for instance, having been so sure of not wanting kids one day, do you have people coming up to you saying, well, look, you don't want to have kids, but look what blessing it's been to your life. You are enjoying it so much now. Is there something like a redemption arc?
Well, this sentence came from my mummy and my mum. And because like I said, I was not maternal. When I would go to a party and there's someone's kids there, my sister would be like, oh my God, a cute kid, hold the baby, play with the baby, have a bond. I'm like,
no.
Hi, that's it. Please stay away from me. I only had a very close bond with my two cousins who actually are 10 years younger than me and the brothers and sisters. They live next door, and since they were born, I changed their diapers, fed them, burped them, did everything, showered them. And I was still very young. I was like 10 years old. These are the only two that I had any kind of like bond with them when they were babies. But other than that, not with anyone else. And I think everyone kind of knew that about me. And then obviously I got pregnant, and then I had Luna, and then I took her first time to Mauritius when she was turning 1, celebrated her first birthday in Mauritius. And I remember I spent a long time with the family there. And then my mummy and my mum turned around to me and she was like, you're an amazing mother. I didn't expect you to be as amazing as you are with her. Like, and I was like, I don't know is that a good or bad thing? But they were like, no, but you never had kind of like that maternal thing. I think it's quite hard. So when you do become a mom, it does change everything about you. Who you are just in itself, your whole sense of who you are is just changed. I do not know how to explain it. Pregnancy completely makes you into another whole person. But then when you are a mom, your whole sense of identity is completely different and you're having to rediscover who you are. So I think in some way, yeah, there is maybe a redemption arc there. But I think it's different for everyone, right? Like, for me, I think it's the fact that maybe the way that I dealt with, having this child, I think I didn't want to be passive about it, even though I didn't want it. But you could also get people who are a bit more passive about it, even though they might want kids. So
True.
Yeah.
That's a really good point.
Yeah. So I think what I mean by that is we were having a conversation with my friend recently about generational trauma and, and I read this book actually recommended by Hansini.
Okay. What is it called?
It's
Hansini, who is the guest we've had on the podcast.
Yes. She's amazing, travels. She recommended me this book called The Book You Wish Your Parents Read and Your Children Will Thank You for Reading.
Okay.
Really long title. And I remember she recommended it to me when, I don't know if it was when I was pregnant or after having Luna, and my partner read it. He was like, amazing.
Okay.
He was like, you have to read it. But it's such a kind of like a book that I really wanted to get into. So I actually listened to it on Spotify, and it was amazing. It was, I think, one book that I would recommend everyone to read is that, whether you're parents or not. It doesn't talk about this is how you need to be a parent. That's not what it does. It talks about more about how to be a better person, how to deal with your traumas, how to forgive your parents for the things that they've done, and they maybe will never ask you for forgiveness, right? And it talks about rupture and repair. And I love this. This is one thing that always stuck with me is where there's rupture, you should repair. And where, where there's kind of like maybe a bond or a little something, like I've shouted at my daughter, you always go back and say sorry. I say sorry to her. And I remember doing this and everyone said to me, Mauritius, I never said sorry to my kids. Why are you talking to her like that? And I was like, well, she's a human. I talk to her, and that's what I mean by, when you're learning, right? You want to make sure that you're going to, like, that's what I was trying, but I clocked myself kind of getting a bit angry, overwhelmed, because also 8 first weeks of post-delivery is hell, because you're always in a trance, you're not sleeping and stuff. But I kind of remember getting very angry because she wasn't stopping to cry. She didn't stop crying. And then I kind of questioned myself, like, why am I angry at a 3-month-old baby for not being able to control her emotions when I can't control my own, right? And that's, I think that point, then I was like, I want to learn from my parents' mistakes. I want to learn, I'm not saying they're bad parents. My mum is an amazing mother, but she has made mistakes and you don't know what she was going through during that time. And I think it's from that point onwards, I started kind of looking inwards and realized that's the only way you're going to be a better parent or a good parent is by being a better person yourself, because your kids at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what you tell them to do, they will look at you and learn from you. The way you speak, the way that you act, the way that you act towards your partner, the way that you act towards, the waitress, the bus driver, everyone around you, they will act the exact same way because that's what kids learn. And you might think they're like 6 months old, they're not taking anything in. They're a sponge, literal sponge. They will remember every single thing and it will come out of nowhere and you'll be like, oh my God, they actually remember all these things. So,
my friend, one of my best friends back home shared this with me. She became auntie or Morsi like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
The little girl was actually one of my sister's flower girls because I think it's kind of full circle, like all our friends coming together. But she was saying her name is Anisha. She'll probably recognize herself obviously. But she was telling me how kids pick on the tone, like the tone with which you speak. Because her dad, I love her dad. Her dad would like call her out, say she's upstairs, and like her dad would be like, Anisha, and she said how the little niece would come like upstairs and start saying Anisha, like just like to call her, like literally to be like looking for her auntie. Yeah. And she was super surprised. She was like, kids pick on the dad, that's his natural way of calling her, but the kids pick on like the aggression or like the tone with which you speak. And so since then they've been trying to lower the tone, which is really cute, but also very eye-opening. I think something that also that you mentioned that really resonated with me. Parents saying sorry, for instance, like the idea of parents saying sorry. So I'm not going to get into the whole generational trauma. I don't think I'm an expert on the topic, but I recently, like when we came back from Mauritius, and that's been quite interesting. I have anecdotes with my mum, for instance, when I remember a particular birthday. I was still in Mauritius. I was a teen. My mum has this ritual of if we are at home on our birthday, she'll take us to like she'll take us to pray. Like it's kind of a thing that stayed in the family. Like she'll take us to like a mandir or like a shivala or whatever. And then we just pray. That's how we start our day. Or like if it's after work or after school, she'll take us to one. But I remember we went to one temple with her, and I happened to stand on her, like in her way while she was like praying. And I think she gave me a tight slap, which is like something I think she did it out of irritation. And I'm like very used to my mum having beaten us when up my dad.
I'm sure the slippers, the wooden spoons.
It was my birthday and it stayed with me.
Yeah.
And I remember like going back home that day, I'm like, you slapped me on my birthday. Like, please don't take this out of context. My parents are like amazing. And I was
sure every Mauritian kid
every Mauritian kid has like, if you haven't had a slipper. No, I haven't had the slipper one, but I've had it recently been like smack. Well, deservedly so. But my mom actually, like I had to communicate, like mom, that actually upset, like that actually did hurt me because it was my birthday. You can have done it on any other day.
I would have been like, okay, I deserve that.
But like my mom came up and said, I'm sorry. Like I just did it out of moment of frustration.
When you were that young.
My mom did say sorry. Like my mom, I think for me, that stayed with me. Or like there was another instance where my mom and I would joke and my mom would say, one day when you start working, like she'd say it as a joke because we have a bit of banter in the family, but she'd say, one day when you start working, you're going to pay me for what you paid for education. And that stayed with me and I cried. And I was like, how can you say that to me, mom? And my dad was like, my dad was upset at my mom for joking that way. But then I think what I'm trying to say there is that communication, we tend to undermine the communication between like parents and kids. But at least in my particular case, having communicated that, my mom did say sorry and then we kind of squashed it out.
Yeah.
But even recently, when we were flying back from Mauritius, my parents, I'm going to see them in 3 weeks, but we all cried. I think because I'm not going to go to Mauritius this time again, like this year at least. But my mom cried and I was talking to her when I was at the airport and I said, you seem very low, but we are going to see each other in 3 weeks because they're coming back to London. And then she said, I just feel so guilty because I shouted at Jessie throughout the wedding prep. My sister, my twin got married. And obviously everyone was on edge before the wedding. During the wedding, it was perfect. Everyone had a good time. But before the wedding, my sister was obviously nervous about things and she wanted things to be done a certain way. And like everyone was on nerves. It's normal. But it was eye-opening that my mom, like, you know, the mom's guilt. Even at this age, my mom still feels it. My mom cried because she felt like she had told my sister off a few times before the wedding. And my sister was like, she felt bad. She's like, why is she crying? Like, this happened. This happens. I shouted at so many people, like, before my wedding. I shouted at her. My sister shouted at me. And then we had to talk to my mom. I'm like, please stop. It makes us feel so bad. And it hurts us that you're feeling hurt.
Yeah.
So to bring that in a nutshell, I think communication between parents, and I'm not here to preach, but I certainly feel like in our case, it did help.
Yeah.
But I feel like it was almost interesting, had some nuances and refreshing in a way to actually register that parents, do you feel parents' guilt at this age?
Yeah. I think like that's one of the, like I didn't have that with my dad. Is still kind of like passive about everything. He's kind of like, oh, change the topic. Whereas my mum is a bit more open-minded, I guess, because she's kind of lived with us and she's has to be.
You both seem to have a very open communication.
Like, which I try to, like, communication is not my strongest. It's not my strongest abilities, but I was like, okay, I need to get better at it. So I'm trying to work on communicating with my mum, but one thing, like I said, like with raising Luna that we did differently was the way that I spoke to her. And Sham also spoke to her, and everyone talks about, oh, he speaks so gently and stuff with her, and he's never raised his voice. But it's about, like, you know, when she's feeling a certain type of way, I need to rush out of the house, for example, and I'm just like, come on, let's go get ready. The more pressure I put on her, the more she's going to just stand there and just not do anything. Whereas, like, if I sit down with her and I'm like, okay, take your time. What's wrong? Okay, why are you feeling like this? What kind of feelings are you feeling? Having that kind of communication makes it, like, easier for her to feel seen and heard and have her emotions validated. And also, in time, that will build our relationship, because she can feel like she's free to come and tell me anything and have any kind of conversation with me as well, and her dad, of course. But I think it's very important, whereas, and also the tone, the way you speak to them. No baby talks.
Baby talks.
We don't, like, I don't mean, you obviously do all these things. We do that. But what I mean by is, as your niece will grow older and they start talking, they will say certain things wrong. Like, for example, Luna would always say mangoes as mono. And the worst thing you could do is call mangoes mono. Instead, you use the correct words for her. And also, when you're talking to her, you don't use baby sentences, if that makes sense. Like, you speak to her properly and she understands. Even as a baby, I still remember I used to talk to her. I used to wipe her little bum, and I used to be like, okay, I'm wiping your bum now. I'm taking the wipes. I'm putting some cream on. It kind of helps them understand the words, I think, and take it in more. I'm not saying don't baby talk with your kids. Do it. It's cute and everything. But, like, when they are using certain wrong words, use the correct words. If they don't know what it is, then you can say, oh, you know, mango means mono. It's the same thing, basically. And then they pick it up. Now she calls it mangoes.
Right.
Like, little things like that. I think that, yeah, it's great. And I think one thing that we've also done very differently with her is because, again, like I said, I didn't want kids, and I didn't want having a child to kind of stop my life. And I didn't want her life to just become, like, around my life. So what I tried to do was blend both together in the nicest way possible. So I will still take her out. I'll still take her, you know, sometimes if there was like a get together or a party, I would still take her. I've taken her to some bars with me and stuff. And, you know, like Mother's Day, went to a bar. When she was very young, and celebrated together, and she was with us, and it was great. It kind of, like, she's involved in our lives, and as it's more age appropriate, and we do more and more things together. So, yeah.
Kesha, for the last part of this conversation,
yes,
I really wanted to get into boundary setting because you related to me offline a few scenarios where the moment you had a baby, you were very clear on certain boundaries. When it came to people visiting your baby or people touching your baby, being around your baby. How important was that to you to set those boundaries? And I know you're not the only person going through it or navigating those conversations, but it is tricky, especially when it comes around family. And it seems like you have had the repercussions of some family members being quite upset by certain boundaries you did impose.
So one thing that I will say before I start this conversation is I don't think it's just our culture. I think this is something that needs to be addressed in everyone around the world that we're dealing with this. But number one, for me, boundary was really important in the sense that Luna, obviously, I didn't know I was pregnant for 5 months, and I was drinking and partying a lot. So I wasn't sure of her health, when she would come out. And I also had a very hard pregnancy. And I also had a very scary birth as well. So I was quite like, but pre-birth, I kind of had set my foot down with what I wanted people to share and announce in terms of, one, I didn't tell anyone the gender, and only our parents knew and our siblings knew, but we only told them, I think, on the 8 months mark, because I was like, I don't want anyone to know. I just didn't want to share that with anyone. Didn't tell anyone the name until she was born. There was also the part of like where, because I wasn't sure what her health was going to be like, I had put my foot down saying there's actually 3 sets of vaccines that you get done when you're born. I think the first one you're done when you're either 8 weeks or 12 weeks. I think it was 8. The first one is 8, 12, and then I think it's 15 or 16 weeks.
So not a few days, but months.
Yeah. So it's like, quite a long time. So the first vaccination was 8 weeks. So I had already said to my partner pre-Luna being born that I didn't want her around. I didn't want any visitors until after she had her vaccinations done, except from our mum, dad, and siblings.
Your very immediate family.
Yes. And I think my family understood it. There was some family members who were not very happy with that. And they kind of like, I think the other thing is like, I came back from the hospital on a Friday night, and then other family members had already planned to come and visit us on Sunday without telling us. And they had to be basically told that they're not accepting visitors. And there was issues of where we didn't want to have Luna around too many people at the start. So some family members did stop talking to us about that because of that. We've had
to this date.
They don't speak to us. We have had issues where I think where some people did not understand our stance on why didn't we want, because some people are quite like, oh yeah, I'm happy to have visitors come immediately. But some people didn't understand why we didn't want visitors immediately. And, having to explain all of that, I was like, I don't think I really need to explain to you my parenting choices, but I think my partner had to explain to some people eventually after she was born, like a year or 2 later. But there was also the issue of I didn't want other people announcing the birth or posting pictures of her. So I did make it very clear to my mum and my sister that I'm happy for my mum to announce the birth like after, when I would tell her, but to like my distant family that I didn't have a direct relationship with. And I said to my sister, my friends, I want to, like, we have like mutual friends, I want to inform them myself. And she was quite grateful. She was like, actually, I'm glad you told me, because I would have thought that because you would want me to do it instead. And I said, no, that's fine. And I only sent Luna's pictures 5 days after she was born. And that's when I sent, oh, she's here. That's her name. She's here. And I still remember having issues with people posting her pictures on social media where I didn't feel comfortable until, a certain age. And I did start
Not even
posting.
blurring the face?
They didn't blur her face. No, it was just on social media.
I mean, everyone obviously has a different take on this, but especially now with social media and the internet, I'm super careful about this.
So I think I used to post pictures of Luna at the start, but then I did see this really scary thing, and I was like, you know what? Nope. I'm taking all her pictures down. So if you look, I've taken all her pictures down. I think there was a boundary when it came down to, just the way that we were also raising her. So I kind of had asked my mum, I was like, and it was a nice conversation. I was like, I don't need you to be another parent. So I don't need you to come and feed her and do this and do that. I need you to come and help me. So this was just fresh postpartum, help me be a helping hand, like help me with the food, help me with the cleaning and things like that. But when it comes to feeding her and, you know, these things, I don't need help to do that. But if I do need it, I would tell you. And also, I always said to them, I want you to enjoy the time that you have with her as a grandparent rather than worrying about, you know, oh no, she hasn't, you know, eaten and this and that. Don't worry, I'll deal with it. I want you to enjoy her and spend the time with her. So I think the boundary thing had a lot of people not very happy about certain things, but I put my foot down, and there were certain boundaries that I feel like also if you don't communicate them and you kind of expect people to just know, that's not going to happen. Where there was a few instances where it was not communicated by other people, and then, you know, there was repercussions for that. But
I do agree. Like that to some extent, I think then it comes from a good place and it comes from a good intention. Someone wanting to share a picture of a baby, or like my parents would perhaps like want to share pictures of the firstborn grandchild. Yeah. But we as a family, we had this conversation. Yeah. And I think you only would know what's accepted to you as a parent, or what you deem acceptable. But yes, in some cases it comes from a good place and with good intentions. But unless you put your foot down and state what you think is reasonable or not, people wouldn't know. Yeah, because I think I was quite like, I don't want her face on social media. I don't want you sending her pictures to people that I don't know, because I don't know these people. Why do you need to send? Because, you know, there's this thing where there's the family group chats where there's a million people that I've never even met in my life, and then they will send the pictures to that chat, and then from there it'll go to someone else and to someone else, and then someone random will be like, oh, I saw your baby's picture. I'm like, when did you see her? I don't even know who you are. But there's things like that where you have to kind of like, I think like parents once, I think when you communicate it quite early on and you are a bit more like again and again and again about it, you've made it clear, this is where I stand. At the end of the day, if they don't listen and they don't kind of understand it and they don't respect it, then, you know, there's the door you can go. That's the way that I see it. Yeah. Kesha, it's been interesting taking you back to your life before motherhood, your life after motherhood, and reviewing your views on this chapter of life. Yeah. What would be your concluding statement if you were to review your journey so far? But also, what would be the one thing you would like to say to women watching you, whether they want to become a mother or not? I think for me, honestly, like becoming a mother has been ups and downs, an amazing journey. I think it gets better from 2.5 years. And then that's where it starts going better and better and better. I think the first 2.5 years are very taxing, very, very heavy on you questioning everything. You're not sure about what you're doing, especially if it's your first. But I love it now. I wouldn't say I loved the first couple of years, but I love it now. It's amazing, and Luna's grown into such an amazing girl. So yeah, I'm very proud of who she's becoming, because I feel like it kind of like shows how we've raised her. So that's my take on, like, you know, my journey so far. So hopefully now there's another path for me to take and like restart my own journey and kind of focus on myself. But I would say one of the biggest thing, and please do not take it the wrong way, and I'm not sure if I mentioned it, I don't think that in the nicest way possible that you need to have a child. And if there are women out there that don't want to, or are unsure about if they want kids or not, because I've had friends who were unsure if they want kids, and one day was yes, one day was no, and then now they've settled on, you know, their decisions. And if there's women out there and men out there who are unsure, I would say only have kids when you're
100% sure you want to be a parent, when you want it, again, not when the timeline is right. And also, I feel like when you don't have a child, it doesn't change, it doesn't take away anything from you as a person. It doesn't take away anything from your life. Again, like I said, it's, you don't know what's in the unknown, right? You don't know the unknown. So you're not missing out on anything until you've become parents yourself. Then you're like, okay, I will miss this little girl or this little boy. But yeah, I think parenting may not be for everyone, but it's a very it's a journey in which you learn so much about yourself, and you get to also become a completely different person, and you get to reshape yourself in some way. So yeah, I think that's all for
Kesha.
me.
Thank you for trusting me with your story.
Thank you.
Whenever we had this pre-chat, you did say your life is somewhat of an open book, but there are things that you might not be comfortable sharing online. But I feel like you open yourself, but at the same time, you spoke to me without filters. Thank you for your trust, but also thank you for somehow validating other people's feelings, like other women's feelings, women who might be listening to you and having a completely different take to what society's to what society expects of us as women. Like not all women are born to reproduce and give birth.
Exactly.
And that's completely fine. Thank you for your trust today, Kesha.
Thank you so much for having me.